Welcome to Only One You Need Radio. We're not the only one you need. You are. We just show you how to get out of your own way. With your host, speaker, author, business coach, and consultant, David Dubé.
Welcome to Only One You Need Radio. It's your host, David Dubé. Super excited to have you here with me today. In this episode, we are continuing with the communication hurdles and how to resolve them. Specifically in this episode, we, my friend, are going to be talking about ambiguity in communication. Now, there are different types of ambiguity when it comes to communication. There's categorical, structural, scope, and phonetic. And to really talk about what ambiguity is, it's kind of like broad brushstrokes when it's talking about a subject, or it's dual meaning within the subject or the category in which you're talking about. And I'll get to that in a moment and make it make more sense to you so you have a greater understanding when it comes to what this is. So phonetically is going to be using the word T-O, T-O-O, or T-W-O. So two, or two, right? T-O and two, T-O-O is also, and then T-W-O is two, right? The number two. And so we use these words differently for different reasons. Sometimes we misplace the word when it comes to typing it out or reading the words on a page, like there, and there. And for those of you who are non-native English speakers, when you are probably the ones who know this the best because you had to study it to, at least if you did study it because your English is your second language, you probably know this better than even those who are first English language speaking individuals. Like for myself, it took me a long time to figure this stuff out. I was like the failure in English. I knew how to write great content, but I was a terrible speller. And that was one of my, many challenges growing up, or in school rather. But after it, for whatever reason, I became like a grammar snob I was. So phonetically, it's using the words in the wrong context or connotation. And this comes with sentence structure and specifically categorical. And I'll talk about that here in a moment. So I guess that's the first thing I'm going to talk about. Now, if you haven't already listened to the other episodes dealing with communication, I actually pretty much start at episode number 50 and with the learning styles. That to me is one of the most important parts to start. I would start there and then come back to this. If you haven't already listened to it, go do so and come back to here. So you have more context to what we're talking about, why we're talking about this, and how this can be used. So categorical ambiguity. So can you get Bob to service the TV? Or you should go get serviced by your doctor. Now, the first sentence, service means repair. Okay. The idea is service is a word that can be used in multiple, you should get your car serviced. Okay. Automatically, you're going to think, get my car repaired. When you say get the TV serviced, well, does the remote not work or is the TV broken? There leaves this idea of, well, there's something wrong here that isn't specified. Now, go get serviced by your doctor. Well, let me tell you, that could have some very misconstrued meanings behind it. Service by the doctor, maybe someone means you should go get diagnosed by your doctor. Either way, the word service is the ambiguous part of that statement. You should go get serviced by your doctor. That's what? What did you just say I should do? So categorical, using a word that has multiple categorical meanings to it, creates ambiguity in the conversation. So let's talk about structural. So structural is going to be Bob sees a man who possesses a car. So that's structure one. The car is a tool for moving around or for getting around. That's structure number two. And then structure number three is Bob saw a man with a car. So all three of those are pretty ambiguous, but structurally they mean the same thing. So sentence structure can be ambiguous, obviously. Now, let's talk about the scope. Ambiguous scope. Every man loved a woman. Okay? To me, there's a lot of mismeaning in here. Every man. So every is in all men, every man that ever existed, every man in America, every man in Canada, every man in Mexico, like where, every man where. And loved, so a woman, is this a general woman? Is this one woman? Is this the same woman? It's kind of arbitrary what or who we're speaking of. And did every man love a different woman or the same woman, right? So there's a lot of ambiguity in that statement. So the scope of a statement can be very ambiguous. And I think the last one I got, the phonetic one, we already talked about that, using the same word. Now, another way, though, that phonetic can work is how you say something as well. So, new day, nude a, right? If you said it too fast, someone's going to hear something totally different than if you said it slowly. Now, how many of you know what I'm talking about? You say words too quickly together, it sounds like something else. In fact, there's what on all over the social media, you played this audio clip and people were hearing one thing when the other thing was actually the thing stated on there. But it was just sped up, or the dynamics of it were slightly changed. So you could have heard one thing, but it was always the other. And the interesting thing about it is there are really different sounds. There's really different sounds. So we can be very ambiguous in many different spots or positions with our communication. And so knowing this is kind of where you begin. And then now that you know that ambiguous lives everywhere, and a great example of this, if you are working in a specific industry, and that industry, like the IT industry, and you work with HTML or C++ or Cobalt or whatever, numerous, and a lot of you listening to this are going to be lost to what I'm talking about. But it's one of those things, like if you work with a group of individuals that use the same acronyms for a lot of the things they talk about, and you are part of that conversation, you're going to get it, even though it's maybe ambiguous to anyone outside. So an outsider comes in and listens to it, they're going to be like, okay, I don't know what a TPN is. I don't know what a MSI is, or a TRT or TRO, or, all these things no one else is going to get, but the people who already know what all those terms mean. So that can be one of those things too, where it's very ambiguous to anyone who's outside or third party to it. So an example of ambiguous communication is going to be you made something and you had someone try it, and that person trying it says, that's very different. Well, it's different. Like, they didn't close the loop. It's different. Well, that left the world wide open to interpretation on your part. Like, holy crap, they hate it. They don't like it. They don't like me. They don't like the food. They don't like my place. They don't like my silverware. I don't know what is it they hate. And so we run our minds into a million different directions. Now, the point here is not to run your mind in a billion different directions. It's to narrow the focus. And the first thing that one should do is to restate what they said. When you restate what they said, you make them often, hopefully, realize that they just said something fairly ambiguous to you. Oh, yes, it is different, and here's how it's different then. So then they go to clarify. Now, if they don't go to clarify after that, then you ask a how question. You say something like, different, how? And then raise your eyebrows and look at them with your hands kind of like wide open, like, how? right? And then they go, oh yeah, okay, so it's different this way. When you ask a how question, you open them up to actually giving you deeper information on specifically what they should do or say to, right? You involve them in deeper conversation. That's really the way to deal with ambiguous conversation. You need them to be specific. And the other part of this too that happens, it happens to all of us, where we have the words in us, but we don't know how to get them out. We don't even know, we just don't have the right way to articulate it. And so helping someone along that journey is very useful. Now, ambiguous conversation can be good for multitudes of reasons. First, it can be a great way to flirt with someone when you're talking about something serious. And that's, mind you, you have to be either A, good at what you're doing, B, you have to know it's okay, right? I'm not suggesting you do this, but there's ways and places that ambiguity can be a strength when it comes to conversation. Now, I'll probably dive deeper into this when I talk about the words that we use, because the words we use in conversation are so vitally important to conversation, and very few people put true intention behind the words they use to make any degree of change in another person. So I definitely want to talk about that in a deeper way with a lot of you, so you have a greater understanding of movement when it comes to the words we use, and authority when it comes to the words we use as well. So, but ambiguity can be very, very, very helpful in conversation. There's ways to make it helpful, but in this aspect here, we're talking about how to change someone's aspect of communication when it comes to ambiguity. So using broad brushstrokes and talking about generalities does not help us oftentimes. And so you want to draw the context deeper into the specifics you're looking for. So, once again, quite a few episodes back when I talked about the framework for the 5 reasons why we communicate and the communication process, it's really going back to the communication process. What's going on inside of you and having the intention to know. And when you have that intention to know, then you know what you're looking for. When you don't have the intention to know, you don't know what you're looking for, and anything's possible. And when anything's possible, then sometimes you have to be okay with ambiguity. But the point here is to get the specifics that you want, but in order to get that, you have to know what you want. So if you don't know what you want, you're not going to get the specifics, and you might have to be okay with generalities or ambiguity in this case. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe and get notified. So on YouTube, subscribe, get notified for every episode that I release. For those of you on iTunes, make sure that you rate this channel. I would love it if you put some comments in there. Tell me how you love this or hate this. I don't know. Let me know. I would greatly appreciate it. Other than that, it's Dave Dubé with Only When You Need Radio. It's time that you be the person that you're meant to be. Believe in all that you're capable of. Finally become more than you thought imaginable. I'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.